My entitled college professor creates an environment in the classroom where it's nearly impossible for anybody to get a good grade. And after dealing with this on the brink of getting my degree, as well as being so frustrated with what was going on, I decided to fight back and stage a rebellion, discovering a fantastic loophole that would force this professor to change his rules. And I've never felt better about making such a big change in my life. Here's what happened. So to start things out, I was a non-traditional student, so I was a little bit older and a little more willing to question things. I was taking a 3000 level political science course, so it was designed for political science majors and was required for my political science degree. It was a fairly basic political science course, but the professor did some weird things. Specifically, there was a quiz every class over the assigned reading, and these quizzes made up a significant part of the grade. But here's the tricky part. He was clearly trying to do some sort of experiment that was trying to teach us about game theory or something like that. And this is how he did it. The correct answer for a quiz question was the answer that was given by the most students in the class. And this is whether it was based in fact or not. Whatever the most students said was the answer was the correct answer. For example, if the question was, what year was the Constitution ratified? Even though the factually correct answer would be 1789, if the majority of the class chose 1776, then 1776 was the right answer, and you got credit for the answer. If you chose 1789, you were wrong and didn't get the credit. This forced you to make a decision. You could either try to be factually accurate or try to figure out what the crowd was going to do and go with that, but neither guaranteed that you would get a correct answer. And let's be honest, if you knew the right answer, trying to figure out what the majority of people would do is a losing proposition. You knew the answer, so trying to figure out how the majority of people could get a question wrong forced you to think opposite to what got you to the correct answer in the first place. Now, the majority of the time, most of the students would actually choose the factually correct answer, but if it was a common misconception or the question was poorly worded, then that could lead to a situation where the crowd was wrong. But here's what drove me absolutely nuts. I was not willing to make my grade dependent on whatever the other students thought might be the correct answer. My grade became dependent on conforming to what the crowd said was true. I had no real control over my grade since the wisdom of the crowd could be anything. And you know what? A class of 30 students was probably not a large enough crowd to give you a good example of the wisdom of the crowds. So basically, learning the material was not the point. Instead, conforming to the crowd was what got you a good grade. And it was right about here, after so much frustration, that I decided to maliciously comply and begin to stage a rebellion. I figured out that if we all agreed to choose the same answer for every question, then we could all guarantee ourselves a perfect score on the quiz. In reality, I only needed a plurality of people to go along with my plan. As long as I could muster enough votes for an answer, then we could control our destiny. It didn't matter if A was the correct answer or not. If we control the votes, we control our grades. And anyone who didn't go with us, they were going to fail regardless of if their answer was actually correct or not. I met everyone at the door to the classroom, and I explained the plan. I said to them, for every question, we are going to choose the first option. If it's multiple choice, choose option A. If it's true or false, we are choosing true. If we all agree to this, then we can all get a perfect score. If you decide to go against us, your answer will be wrong. So fast forward, and the first class comes around, and we did this. But the professor figured out after a few questions that we were gaming the system. So he had us redo the quiz and graded us on the factually correct answers. After the second class that we did this, the professor changed the rules. There were two answers that would get you full points, the factually correct answer, and whatever answer the majority agreed upon. In the end, I was okay with this arrangement. I could study and give the correct answer without being penalized for not conforming to the crowd think. Or if I made the same mistake as the majority of the people, then I still got credit for it, and it was a good discussion point for the class. And you know what? Yes, I absolutely got an A in that class. I'm not sure if the professor ever figured out who organized the rebellion, but I did end up working with him in graduate school, and we got along just fine. I always wondered though, did he do this to teach us about the power of grassroots organizing? It might not have been his intention, but he turned me into a leader even though I never wanted to be one. I organized a campaign to overthrow bad leadership, and we created a new regime where truth and discourse were both valued, and we learned that a plurality of voters can determine the path forward, even if they are not the majority. That is an awesome way to not only game the system, but also to get this stupid professor to change the rules. I can't imagine being in a class like that and having to put up with this level of stupidity. Like seriously, if you ask me, I want my grades to be graded on my abilities and not just on what the crowd thinks in the class. Because then you're gonna get scenarios like this. One person's gonna rise up, they're gonna say, hey, we're picking this answer, and if you don't go with us, you're gonna fail. And you're basically just being strong-armed into going with that answer, or else you're gonna get a bad grade. Like, I really get the point about what he's trying to say here, and I get that this goes on in society pretty much like all over the place, but for this to be reflected in an academic setting is honestly a little bit jarring. I would be not only incredibly frustrated that this was going on, but I would also do exactly what this original poster did. I would stage a rebellion right then and there and guarantee that either something's going to change or I was absolutely going to get a good grade. So good for the original poster for taking their fate into their own hands, because the way this professor set up this class was honestly really stupid. And I guarantee that if you did nothing about this situation, there's a high likelihood that you, as well as your classmates, would have all suffered with horrible grades. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled Karen gets shut down at a funeral after she makes the dumb decision to try and push me and my aunt around. And I've never felt better about watching someone get taken down. Here's what happened. So my mom passed away in 2011, right around the time that my paternal aunt was left by her husband after beating cancer for a third time. Now, my aunt is very physically changed from all the chemo and radiation. She had gained a lot of weight, lost most of her hair, and had aged a bit faster due to a lack of hormones from having every trace of womanhood cut from her body. I have extreme anxiety stemming from agoraphobia, so my aunt was my safe space for the duration of the whole event, which lasted for several days. This consisted of everyone being at my parents' summer house in Mexico, basically standing around, chatting, drinking, and eating everything in sight. This funeral had every family member, plus people who were aunts and uncles that I'd never even met in my life. Not being a drinker and not knowing a lot of the people walking around, my aunt and I sat down to smoke and catch up on our lives and whatnot. Well, suddenly, while we were mid-sentence in her cancer update, a Karen that I had never even set eyes on before in my life starts to groan loudly. She swats at the air like our cigarette smoke is even anywhere near her, and she's making this giant fuss. The entitled Karen says, "Oh, that's disgusting. How can you behave in such a disgusting manner at a funeral?" I say to her, my mom was a smoker, so she would approve. This Karen then looks at me and says, "She was your mother? She didn't teach her daughter how to be a lady, I see." This Karen then pointed at my aunt and said, "And you should know better. What do you have to say for yourself, smoking in front of this child?" Now, for reference, I'm 33 years old. I'm hardly a child. Well, my aunt takes off her sad cancer hat and strokes the small tuft of hair that she had left in the front, and then, booming her voice, but not quite yelling, just so everybody could hear, "What's it gonna do? Give me cancer?" Well, needless to say, the Karen looked uncomfortable after the hat came off, but still managed to look insulted and then walked away. After a millisecond of silence, I giggle snorted and laughed until my side hurt. Everyone else in the room just kind of smiled, though I think I heard a few snickers. I asked my aunt who that was, and my aunt said, "I don't know. Some weirdo that probably came for the free food." And needless to say, my aunt is amazing, and I'm so glad she put that Karen in her place. Yeah, you can tell that entitled Karen was like looking for a fight or some kind of argument. Like, I'm willing to say that the original poster and their aunt were most likely off to the side and completely out of everybody's way. They weren't bothering anybody, and they were probably far enough away where you would have to go to them to get some smoke in your face. So good for your aunt for putting this weird Karen in her place. She had no business bothering you and your aunt, and she honestly absolutely had it coming. I am very concerned about my boyfriend's behavior around his best friend, and at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So to start things off, I've been dating my boyfriend for about 1.5 years, and he has a huge close-knit friend group. One of those friends, let's call him Chris, that's not his real name, is around his age, and they have been very close friends for about 10 plus years. Chris is very much in touch with his feelings. He is a sensitive guy, I would say. He is known to be very loving and touching, and at social gatherings, it is not uncommon to see him be very close to his friends, massaging their shoulders, cuddling with girlfriends in the sofa. Everybody knows that this is just a part of who he is, and they all love him for it. And I don't really have a problem with this. I am very happy that my boyfriend has such great friends, and I really do value his relationship with Chris, as I think it's beautiful for them to have such a close friendship. But for the sake of the story, as an LGBT member myself, I would say that my radar is always 100% on point, and I was completely sure Chris was gay until my boyfriend mentioned a girl that Chris had previously dated. I still would have bet all my money that Chris might still be attracted to guys, but he is very, very religious, so I bet he wouldn't even really be honest about that, maybe even to himself. But a few things have been bothering me for a long time now, but I haven't been able to talk to my boyfriend about it since I know it's a sensitive topic, especially because they've always been such close friends for such a long time. So Chris lives in a city about 6 hours from us, and he's in our city literally every month, and my boyfriend also visits him several times a year. When my boyfriend is visiting Chris, they will meet up with their other friends there, including some girls that I don't trust for irrelevant reasons. I have made a point to my boyfriend that I would like to come visit with him the next time. That way I can meet all the other friends, so I can maybe feel comfortable with him spending time with them while I'm not there. Now, he has agreed, but has still gone down there 3 to 4 times without including me. So anyways, my issue really started when he visited Chris in the beginning of the summer. My boyfriend and I had talked previously about their friendship, and he told me, for example, that Chris usually itches or rubs the palm of his hands to calm him, and that he is very cuddly. At the moment, I thought that it's cute that they could do that, as most men would see it as gay, and I don't think it's fair for girls to be able to have such close friendships, but not granting men the same space. I have chronic back pain, and for the month leading up to his visit with Chris, I'd been complaining about how much my back hurt, and that I really needed a massage. I pointed out several times that I would love to book a couples massage together with him, but then nothing happens. Well, he goes to visit Chris, and on the first day, he happily told me that he booked and paid for a massage for the both of them. I expressed that I was hurt by this, since he knew that I wanted to get one with him, and I felt like he prioritized his friend. Well, he understood and he apologized. Then my mind started running, thinking about my boyfriend being in the same bed as Chris, while Chris is rubbing his hands and arms, and I honestly felt disgusted. I then asked my boyfriend if they slept in the same bed or anything like that, and he said that they slept separately, so that calmed my thoughts down just a little bit. Well, my boyfriend comes home and everything is fine, and I kind of just brush off everything that I've been thinking about. But over the summer, I've noticed how much my boyfriend actually prioritizes Chris. It's always Chris this and Chris that. We could be in the middle of a conversation, but if Chris calls, he will immediately answer and talk to him for at least an hour. Now, my parents know the owners of a water and animal park, so we went on a getaway there over the weekend with my family. On one of the days, we were going to go swimming, but I had to help one of the workers clean up kangaroo poop first, and my boyfriend wanted to stay at the house. So, after 1 hour of breaking the worst sweat of my life in the sun, I go back to the house and I find my boyfriend talking on the phone literally 20 meters from the house. I asked my mom about it, and she says he's been talking for 1 hour. He sees me and he knows that I'm waiting on him to leave for the pool, but he stays on the phone for at least another 40 minutes. I figured that he was talking to his family and something had happened, because it really didn't make sense to me. When I spend time with my family, I am never on my phone. He will leave me alone with them for periods of time, and I spend that time actively connecting with them. Well, when he eventually comes back, it turns out he was talking to Chris. I am severely frustrated by this, so I bring it up immediately, and my boyfriend gets super angry with me, telling me that maybe he just needed that time to talk. Anytime that Chris is in town, my boyfriend will drop literally everything to go spend time with him. And let me remind you that they literally see each other every month. He spends about 1 to 2 weeks here regularly, and anytime my boyfriend visits Chris, he tells me that he's going to come home several days before he's actually coming, and that really annoys me. And I brought it up with my boyfriend yesterday, and he understood and apologized, saying that it wasn't intentional. Fast forward, and my boyfriend went to see his family overseas during the summer. He was supposed to go for 2 weeks, which was already hard for me, but then he surprises me by saying that it's actually going to be 3 weeks. This was super hard on me, and he knew it. We promised to have alone quality time for several days once he got home. Well, he comes home, and he tells me that he's booked a trip to Chris for 1 week, just 6 days after coming home from a 3-week trip. I feel discarded, especially since I wasn't invited, but I figured maybe he just needed time with his friend, and I didn't want to be a bad girlfriend and try and stop him. Anyways, what really is bugging me is their intimacy. I'm not completely sure if they are as close now as when he was single, and I guess that's what's messing with my head. But every time I try to brush this off, something happens that makes my mind race again. For example, at a friend's birthday party about 2 months ago, Chris had come down to also join in, and as usual, Chris is walking around holding holding everybody, stroking their hands, giving them a massage, cuddling with some girls in the sofa. Meanwhile, my boyfriend and I are sitting outside smoking and talking with some other people. And lo and behold, Chris comes up and starts rubbing my boyfriend's shoulders. He kind of runs his hands down his arms in a very intimate way. Then he looks at me and immediately pulls back, as if he's been caught doing something wrong. I felt like this was really weird, because as I said, everybody knows that this is just how he is. So why would he act weird about it? My boyfriend is not really in a good place right now, and neither am I. We have both expressed to each other that we need each other a little bit more right now. On Tuesday, he came home and told me that his mom wants to spend time with him and his sister, who lives in the same city as Chris, and that they are going Friday through Sunday. This is no issue at all until he says that he's going to stay 1 to 2 days extra to spend time with Chris. Well, those extra 2 days are in fact 4 days. So instead of being away for 2 days, he's instead suddenly gone the entire week. Let me also mention that his sister doesn't have space for both him and his mom, so he will already have to sleep at Chris's place during this time, spending the whole afternoons with him. So I just felt like that was enough. Why can't he take this time with his family and go home together with his mom? Why does he always have to jump on every chance to go and be with him even more? And so currently, he is away with Chris right now. He texted me yesterday about what he was going to do for the day, mentioning that Chris said he's going to help me with my lower back, as he has some techniques and some tools. Now, I don't know why, but I'm starting to really hate Chris. I hate the thought of him stroking my boyfriend's arm, scratching his head, and now even a massage. If any of my boyfriend's friends gave him a massage, I wouldn't think twice. But now, I don't even want Chris's hands near my boyfriend. I have thought a lot about it, and I have come to the conclusion that this is about intimacy. I don't care if Chris is 100% straight, I still don't want him scratching my boyfriend's hand, because I see that as an intimate act, which should only be shared between the both of us. When I was single, I used to spoon with my girlfriends when they slept over. We would kiss on the mouth to say hi or goodbye, and we held hands when we watched movies. Everything was completely platonic. This was just how my friendships were. But now, being in a relationship, I would never spoon with my friends or hold their hands watching a movie, because even though it's platonic and it's harmless, it is still an act of intimacy. I only want to be intimate with my boyfriend. And if Chris really is bi, then that makes everything even worse. My boyfriend is completely oblivious to when people like him. I've caught on to several of his friends who are girls, which he completely didn't see, even though it was obvious. So I highly doubt he would ever think his guy friend of several years was interested in him. But yeah, I can't know that, so I'm just assuming he is straight. But regardless, my feelings still stand. So all in all, I can live with the fact that my boyfriend spends a lot of time with Chris, but I want to know exactly what their friendship is like, as well as how they act with each other. I want to know if he actually still rubs his hands and his arms. I want to know everything, but I don't know how to ask in a sensitive way. I know for a fact my boyfriend is going to be super defensive when I bring this up, but I have to know. This has been on my mind for such a long time that I simply need an answer. I don't want to feel the clump in my stomach every time they spend time together. So truly, how can I bring this up to him in a good way? How can I explain my feelings and let this all out? What should I do? First of all, I think it's a very good idea that you're catching on to what's going on. I don't think that your boyfriend is like getting with Chris or anything like that, but it's very clear that Chris is being a little too touchy-feely with your boyfriend. And the fact that your boyfriend isn't saying something, or at least being like, hey, let's not do that anymore, or something along those lines, in my opinion, is not okay. Because you know what? I agree with you. Holding hands, rubbing each other's arms, sitting close with someone, that is absolutely reserved for your significant other, especially if you're in a relationship. Like, I am quite serious about that, and I'm right there with you. But also, and I think more importantly, your boyfriend is prioritizing his friend Chris over you. Plain and simple. He is going to his friend much more than you, and that's probably why all these thoughts are popping up in your head. I mean, there might be a situation where Chris is legitimately just being a really close friend, and it is nothing more, but it's the fact that your boyfriend is constantly calling Chris and going to Chris all the time. I mean, that in my opinion really looks sketchy. So your feelings and your anxieties around this situation are completely justified. So if I was in your shoes, I would be talking to him pretty openly about how you feel about Chris. Like, the way that Chris is acting is making you uncomfortable, and you feel like you're being ignored in favor of Chris. And that's not okay. Like, literally, the point of having a relationship is so that you two can be in this together. And right now, you feel like you're on the outside looking in. Now, when it comes to whether or not Chris is attracted to your boyfriend, I would personally be very careful about that subject, because sure, you might be right in that regard, hard, but I'm sure it's like incredibly sensitive. And there might be some like ongoing secret that Chris hasn't revealed, so your boyfriend probably isn't gonna reveal it either or something like that. So I know if I went into that aspect of it, I would just be very careful with how I word it. I would really try not to accuse anyone of anything that hasn't happened, because in my opinion, that would just make things a lot worse. But regardless, hopefully this conversation can go well for you, because this really sounds like a sketchy situation, and I know that if I was in your shoes, I absolutely would want to get to the bottom of this. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.